everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I know you are joining us from a different time zone. It is afternoon here in Zimbabwe. It's quite a sunny day. And we're excited to open up the Mitambo International Theatre Festival discussion with this discussion, Theatre Matters, performing with and in the face of a global pandemic. My name is Zaza Muchemwa, and I'm going to be the moderator for this discussion. And joining me on this discussion, we have Nicole Salter. Nicole Salter, she's an actress, a dramatist, an educator, and advocate. She's an active member of the Actors Equity Association, the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and the Actors Center. And she sits on the Council of the Dramatists Guild and serves as chair of the board of the Theatre Communications Group. We also have Yvette Hardy, who is a theatre director, a producer, an educator, and advocate. She is a national director of Acetage SA and serves as president of Acetage from 2011 and to present, which networks across 100 countries. She was responsible for hosting the 19th Acetage World Congress and Performing Arts Festival, Cradle of Creativity for the first time in Africa in 2017. She produced the award-winning Colonnades theatre-led production, Truth in Translation, which toured widely for several years. She was awarded the Mickey Minor Award for Lifetime Achievement from International Performing Arts for Youth for a contribution to theatre for young audiences locally and globally. We also have Jason Mpepo, who's a veteran stage, TV, film actor and producer from Zimbabwe. And then we also have Tobias Biancone, who's the Director General for International Theatre Institute worldwide. We were supposed to have been joined by Nicholas Moyo. Unfortunately, he has some work emergency that was clashing with our meeting, so he won't be able to join us on this panel. I'm just going to give you a rundown of how we're going to do this panel. We're going to have presentations from the panel, and then we're going to have a conversation amongst the panel and the moderator, and then we're going to then open up for question and answer from the audience. But as we're also hearing presentations from the panelists, feel free to send your questions via the chat option just there on the bottom of your screen. If you're using a desktop like I'm using, the chat option is at the bottom of the screen, probably the third option the fourth option, excuse me, from your left. You can just click there and then send your questions as we're progressing. So to start us off, I'm going to ask 10-minute presentation, and then we move on to the next panelist. Yvette, please take it away.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's wonderful to be here with you all today. It is a strange time indeed for all of us. And I think for people who've been working in live theatre their whole lives, as I have done, to now be largely working in this virtual realm feels, on the one hand, a huge opportunity, on another hand, extremely strange and incredibly busy. I don't know if anyone else has had the experience that life just seems to have got more intense since COVID lockdown. We've been experiencing that in South Africa, but also across the globe. So as you heard from my introduction, I work with Acetage, which is the International Association of Theatre for Children and Young People. And our organization is particularly interested in making sure that every child has access to the arts from the earliest possible age, right the way through their growing up into their young adulthood. And we've, in a way, suffered a kind of double whammy, the artists in this sector, because on the one hand, of course, we've experienced all the things that I'm sure you've experienced as well, which are that theatres are closed or have been closed for a very long time, that festivals were either cancelled or moved online, that projects that needed to happen, all had to find ways to go virtual. But in addition to that, because our audience is children and young people, And because the education system has been so disrupted, certainly in South Africa and again across the globe in many, many places, so it has been incredibly difficult for us to be able to reach our audience during this time. Whereas we would have had artists going out into schools and into creches and into community centers where they would be able to perform for children and young people or work with children and young people. Now, of course, all of those activities have come to an end. Those environments are either not open or not open to outsiders. So, you know, even as the schools have started to open in South Africa, and we have some form of kind of blended learning starting to happen here. So there's a big resistance to artists being present in the school because of COVID regulations. And there's also a lot of concern, and I think, you know, obviously rightly so, from parents around online environments because of safety issues for children and young people. And of course, there's the element that for us who have been, as I say, part of the live performing arts all our lives, we really value and believe in the essential quality of that live performance. The fact that there is a kind of a meeting that can happen in real time and space that is impossible online. Yes, there are other things that can happen online, but it is certainly not the same as what can happen in that real shared space. And for us, it's been very important to try and find ways to reach children and young people so that they're not sitting in front of a screen all day, because, you know, so much of our work has been about actually getting children away from screens. And now suddenly in this time, the only way to reach children is through a screen. So there are all these contradictions that we've had to deal with. I think, you know, on another level, of course, there's just been the enormity of the impact on the sector. And I don't think that we can underplay that. I would love to talk about all the innovations and the positive things that are happening, and I will do so in a moment. But I really also want to say that for artists, this has been an extraordinarily difficult time. Acetage has been holding what we've been calling global coffee sessions, where we've been having meetings across the world in different regions, in the Middle East, across Africa, in Oceania, and the Far East, and, you know, the Americas, etc., Europe. And the common themes that emerge are people feeling desperate, people feeling that their entire reason for being has been taken away from them, people feeling powerless, people not able to earn a living and not able to look after their families in the way that they were before, and people who are facing, you know, either the end of their theatre company or the closing of their theatre space completely, or other really traumatic events that are impacting on their lives. So I really want us to just hold that in mind, that as much as we can talk about the opportunities this pandemic has created, it has had a real human cost. And in South Africa, where artists often live very hand to mouth in the way they work, for many people, they've been out of work. The relief efforts that have been put in place by government have been absolutely inappropriate and, you know, unable to really meet the need. And in fact, people have really been needing very basic things. They've been needing food parcels. That in a nutshell is the depth of the situation. But at the same time, what I can say is that there has also been an extraordinary sense of solidarity in this time. And that solidarity has operated on so many different levels, whether it's on the community level, people coming together to support one another, to make sure that you know, food parcels are gotten out to children, for example, who are no longer accessing feeding schemes at schools. And then along with that, artists creating small performances that can perform as the children are receiving their food, so that they are shown some ways of dealing with COVID, and that they're given some moment of hope and enjoyment in what is a very, very difficult time. We've also recognized in South Africa that both for artists and for our audience, the online medium is not the main space that people can access. It's really a space of privilege. you need to have the finances for data, for Wi-Fi, for a device in the first place, in order to access. And so we've made a huge effort in South Africa to work with other partners to create, for example, hard copy activity books, which speak to the characters in plays, which use imaginative, playful, creative kind of engagements, but which take children through processes which they can engage with in their own time and space, and allow them to access something of what the arts can give them. So that has been an element of what we've been doing, is trying to find a way to meet the need, trying to find a way to work alongside the virtual offerings. But what has become apparent, as I said, is that there is such openness to solidarity. And through these coffee sessions that were held all over the world, and literally, I think hundreds of hours spent in conversation, sharing our vulnerabilities, sharing our fears, sharing our hopes, what we've seen is that people are essentially going through the same processes, or the same essential experience. They might be at different stages of it, but they are all on the same journey. And as a result, we've had such extraordinary lessons to be able to share with one another, and ideas for how we can take things online, and how mentorships can still happen, how artistic collaborations can still happen, how performance can still happen, still with an element of something live about it, even despite the fact that we might be in an online space. And so we've seen a lot of very exciting innovations, from WhatsApp theatre that literally happens on your phone in a WhatsApp group, but happens with real artists and a real writer and director who have directed the piece of theatre, to theatre in Zoom rooms, to recorded theatre and live streamed theatre, which of course also comes with its own questions. We can talk about that some more later. But festivals that have gone online and that have created really interesting ways of connecting people, so that it's not just about this kind of space where we are kind of in a conversation which might be quite one way. Hopefully we will get to some real conversation towards the end of the session, but also, through using a lot of online devices, whether they are, for example, a meeting device, and I'm afraid I can't remember the name of it now, but it essentially allowed one to be present at tables and to go through speed dating with people who were, interested in the work that you were doing, etc. So people have found different mechanisms, different technological mechanisms, in order to share their work, to connect, to create new projects, to reach out to one another. And the major result of this reaching out from an ASSETEJ point of view has been the creation of something which I'd like to share with you now. So this has been the product of these hours of meeting. ASSETEJ being secret in public for the first time. It's really young people times of crisis. It looks like it's working now. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. This is the manifesto. And basically this has been created by over 100 countries. And we have been able to, through this manifesto, share with one another the value of the arts at a time of crisis. Also willing to, and to our children's capacity to adjusted young people. So this is the introduction, and then it speaks to various sectors of society. It speaks to citizens being urged to lobby for the rights of children to take parts in arts and culture, for example, national governments, departments for education, ministries of culture, local authorities, arts councils, arts organizations and institutions, early year settings, the media, and then ASSETEJ. What will ASSETEJ be doing in relation to all of these things. We made some commitments in this document. And one of those is to engage with professional artists and all relevant role players to debate and collaborate on concrete actions to support the arts for young audiences nationally, regionally, and globally. And this whole document is really speaking back to the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, and particularly to these two articles. Article 13, which is the right to freedom of expression, and this right shall include freedom to receive information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers, etc. And the second one, Article 31, talks about the child's right to rest, leisure, play, recreational activities, and to participate freely in the cultural life and the arts. And that governments shall respect and promote the right of the child to participate fully in cultural and artistic life. And for us, this is incredibly important. So this document is not a one-size-fits-all kind of document. We are trying to find the common ground between all of us, wherever we are in the world, but we're also saying to our national centers, for example, use this document as you feel. So for example, if in your particular context, your main aim is to make sure that the Department of Education does not take the arts out of the curriculum at this time, use this document for that purpose. If in your context, your main aim is that artists who are suffering under the pandemic need to have some form of relief, use this document to support that. And because it is such a wide-ranging document, it capacity to be used in a variety of different contexts. So I'm very excited about the fact that the global solid is happening, that we have come together artists at this time to stay together and that I thrive in the post the pandemic. And I really see a lot of potential for that to happen. So thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you for that very insightful presentation in terms of what you are as ASATEJ are doing. Nicole, are you ready with your presentation? All right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Salter. I'm here on the land originally known as the nation of Lenape, also known as New Jersey, in America. Can you guys hear me? You're frozen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll just keep going until you start moving. I'd like to thank Yvette. That was an amazing presentation that allowed me to understand what's going on in South Africa as it relates to the theater that you represent there. I am here representing Theater Communications Group, which is a nonprofit service organization that serves institutions and the field at large of non-for-profit theater in America. I am also here representing the Dramatists Guild, which is a guild of professional writers for stage, screen, and television. And I'm here representing their interests as well. I'm also an individual artist here in the States, and I'm representing the perspective therein. I'm also a Black artist in the state, and I'm representing that perspective in this conversation as well. Much of what Yvette had to say is resonant, incredibly resonant, particularly what the COVID has had on our industry, literally shutting it down. That has impact both on institutions and individuals. Institutionally, we find that we are being supported through tremendous relief, mainly a program that allows for the continuation of employment temporarily. But as the deadlines for those kinds of relief programs are coming to a quick end, we find that a lot of our institutions are in dire jeopardy, particularly those that are smaller and those institutions tend to serve more on a local scale. And so it's really devastating to think that those institutions will not be able to provide our services on a local level. And it would become even more, our industry will become even more stratified and access points for people to have a theater. As you can imagine, live theater is not happening at all, but neither are live sports or music programs or any kind of public gathering beyond, I think, 50, well, it depends, state to state. I know in my state, New Jersey, they just permitted restaurants to open at 25%, and they're considering public gathering at the same capacity currently. But most producers find it impossible to be able to produce a show and make their money back, let alone profit, at a 25% capacity of any house. Also, therein lies being of the people actually involved in the presentation itself. Um, Testing in the States is available, but questionable. The level of trust that the American people have about what's being tested and whether or not it is reliable is also proving to cause a lot of panic. So you'll get a test one place and you'll get a test at another place and have two different results. Which ones do you believe that will permit you to go forward with work? Our television industry is revving back in seeming full force. They're able to do so by ensuring or promising to ensure what they're calling podded activities. That they have people come and quarantine for 15 days before they start production. They're not meant to leave or for the period of production, and they allow them to quarantine before going back to their homes, and that has just begun. I know many people going into production October 1st or November 1st, so they're already going into quarantine. Um, Individual artists in the theater realm are incredibly affected by this pandemic, mainly in the area of healthcare. Healthcare in the United States for the artists works largely through the unions, and unions are able to provide that coverage through work weeks. But if there's no work, you can't earn weeks, which means you can't earn healthcare. So there's a great need for relief response in that arena. There are charities and foundations stepping to the plate, but all of those institutions have a limited capacity and certainly can't operate indefinitely. So there's a great concern there. Then on the social is experiencing amazing opportunity for solution. There's a anonymous organization calling themselves We See You White American Theater that has posted a list of demands for the evolution and complete overhaul of the institutional structures that support our business. One of the interesting things to me about that is that it's really allowing everyone to question the paradigm in which we were operating. It was largely built on a sense of scarcity and hierarchy, and to move those thoughts into how we can become what we're calling essential workers. So part of what was decimating is when this movement began, our workforce was considered to be non-essential. So when you see the document that Yvette provided and the rights of the child to be engaged in arts and culture, that is not considered an essential thing here, privilege here. And I feel it's a contradictory privilege because everyone's narrative. You actually can't experience your outside of the narrative. One has one, and just as you can't experience life without food, you're going to have to eat, but it's always better to have a chef. Here we are as professional storytellers and story makers, offering an opportunity for us to consider ourselves and our narratives, our collective narratives, who we are to each other, who we are to the world, and what the meaning of life is. That is our essential service. But the systems that we have created have rendered us ineffectual and not essential because we can't operate outside of the theater space that has been created. So there is a ton of innovation and revolution around how we distribute our services, because largely for the institutions I represent with the Theater Communications Group, we represent all non-profit charities. We're 501c3 institutions, meaning we're public service. for profit. So how do we continue our service? If we all were in the medical industry, and there was no hospital, we'd find a way to render our service by securing a place for the safe distribution of our work. Similarly, I think people are using the internet to find new and innovative ways to provide live performance. There's an organization called Theater for One. Talk about a non-capital model for working. It's a theater that literally sets artists up to perform for one person at a time. It's incredibly engaging. And they have revolutionized a platform that allows for live performance in a way where you can't see yourself. Like on Zoom, I'm here, I'm looking at you, but I'm kind of looking at me too, because here I am. So it brings us back to the unself curated space of being in the live presence of someone else. And it's quite remarkable. But as Yvette also said, it is limited to the access of the visual. Not everyone here has access to secure internet. Not everyone here has the ability to purchase tickets. Not everyone can do that. So it still becomes a sort of stratified thing. And that we're looking for ways to decentralize that kind of power to create access for all. On the Dramatists Guild front, we were charged by our new, uh, I guess she's a senator, but now she's running for vice president of our nation, a woman named Kamala Harris, who is encouraging a level of public discourse and participation in politics amongst our population by asking us to write the bills that we'd like to see enacted into legislation. And so there's a group called Be an Arts Hero that has devised a bill for the creation of an arts paradigm that will allow the arts to exist outside of the hierarchical structures of our previous industry. So those kinds of offerings are really, really exciting because they allow for a re-envisioning of the artists in society and the service that we provide as being essential. So that's what's going on here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much for that very insightful presentation in terms of the amazing work that you're doing with the TCG and the Dramatists Guild. Jason Pepo, are you ready with your presentation? You are on mute. Please unmute yourself. Jason, you are on mute. Yes.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So my name is Jason Pepo, and I am an artist based here in Zimbabwe, Harare to be specific. I represent an organization called Patime Redu Edutainment Trust, the long word. Well, Patime is a Shona word which means the well. So at the well for us traditionally is where people would come to meet and draw water, and then as they draw water, they have conversation. So I think it's similarly also with every other situation. Maybe it could be in Europe, in America, wherever, where you go to a water fountain and meet up with people and draw water, drink water, and at the same time share conversation. So for us, that is how we coined Meredu as a space where people come to meet and get information. And how do we do this? We do this through the use of theater as a development communication tool. And just like Yvette, as well as Nicole mentioned earlier on, in terms of how they've been engaging audiences through theater. For us as Patime, we engage mostly young people in educational institutions through theater. And due to this pandemic, we've been adversely affected. Schools have been closed for the past 5 months now, and because of the lockdown, and we've not been able to engage with our audiences. And in Zimbabwe, the economy is really bad, terrible. trying to get secured internet or Wi-Fi is terrible. And so just thinking of an alternative means of engaging with the young people has become really, really problematic for us. And so as an organization, we've been trying to find ways of how best we can do it. So far, what we have done is that we've adopted the use of radio as well as TV, where we record our material and then share it on TV and then have the young people participate. But you know, initially we've had a target group that we've been working with, a target group that we had wanted to follow the educational material that we've been sharing with them through the live discussions and live theater that would help with them. But now we cannot have these young people follow through with that because these are not the same target audiences that we've been targeting all along. So that then beautiful for us because when it comes to monitoring, evaluating, and looking at the impact of our program, we then realize that it's all lost in the maze because of the pandemic. So for me, these are that we are facing here, and as the pandemic has also come through, it has brought with it some opportunities, and some opportunities have been opportunities to do with engaging with an online audience. We've been making very short strides in line with engaging with online audiences, because still, generally, as we speak, the issue to do with Wi-Fi still becomes a very big challenge for us. One, for us as the producers of the shows, to even try to broadcast the material is very expensive for us. It's difficult for us. It's also difficult to build an audience. And then when we look at the audience itself, it's also difficult for the audience to also begin to engage with us online because also Wi-Fi is not as reliable as it is supposed to be. So these are some of the challenges that we're facing caused by the pandemic itself. And because of that, we are trying to adopt other means, like, for example, engaging people via WhatsApp, trying to compress the work that we have produced. But also, you know, when you compress material, quality is compromised. And when the product gets to people, it's not the best of the product that you want to reach out to people. And then it looks like maybe you're not doing your work very well. And when we try to share our with the next broadcaster, they're not digitalized enough. As such, you find that the material that we share with them is compromised. And also because the broadcaster itself is understaffed, recently there were quite a number of people who were positive or found to be positive at the national broadcast. And because of that, they had to stream a lot of the staff members who work there. And so when it comes to programming itself, it also then becomes a challenge because our work is compromised. Sometimes it's not broadcast, sometimes it's broadcast. You need to follow up on the people are not available for you to be able to make sure that the broadcast is on time or the broadcast happens. So, you know, in just trying to look out for the different channels of broadcast or different channels of engagement with an online audience, it has proved really to be difficult for us. So sometimes you then begin to wonder whether you are doing the right thing or you have an audience actually that you're engaging with out there. Of course, there are numbers that might come where you look at an incremental viewership of material that you might have put online. But you know, sometimes it's really difficult for you to really claim that figure and say, look, I had engaged with this amount of number of people during the broadcast of my production. Really a big challenge for us. It's something that is new to us. We were so much used to a live audience, and you know, and now you want to go the route of broadcasting online or broadcasting on television, which is something that you have not been used to and is really proving difficult. The other challenge also for us is that at Patime we have a theater which is about 1 year, 6 months old. And as we were beginning to say we are growing in numbers of the audience that's been coming to the city, that's when the pandemic hit, and meant that a cut in revenue because we do not have bookings for the theater. They come here and there. You cannot put up any live shows, so which means that there is no revenue that is coming through the theater. And we are not funded by the government to run theater. It is a theater that is self-sustaining. We've been trying to fundraise, but also you find that a lot of charities are focusing their attention on the pandemic itself, which at the moment what is big on global. So just trying to get resources to make sure that you put food on the table, to make sure that employees within the organization are sustained is very difficult, because as an organization, we rely either on case taking, on bookings of the theater. We also rely on funding from funders. But because of the shrinking resources worldwide, it's been difficult to actually continue operating. We've been hoping that the government might also come through and support the arts industry in Zimbabwe, but they have not been able to release any relief funds. I've not heard of any artist who's received any relief funds, or any organization that has received any relief funds. And this is really difficult for us because we need to survive. We survive on funding, we survive on takings, we survive on bookings. And if all these resources are not coming through, that means that the industry itself, or theater itself in Zimbabwe, suffers a great deal. We've seen a lot of festivals announcing that they are either going the route of broadcasting online, just like Mitambo Festival is doing. We've seen others also postponing the festivals. This mostly also maybe is because that there have been commitments by funders to fund the festival. But then when you go on the drawing board, you then realize that it's much better to postpone the festival rather than to continue doing it, because you realize that there will not be any kind of impact that is realized of it. And I really would like to applaud Mitambo Theatre Festival at this moment for putting up this festival and going the route of doing it online. But still, the challenge comes again to say, like, for example, as we do this discussion, if we were to say our target audience is in Zimbabwe, how many of theater lovers are actually engaged in this conversation, to be hearing from people from all over the world in terms of how they are managing in this pandemic? You'd find that sometimes it might actually be a small number that is engaging. And it is mostly because, one, we are not supported as much as we want to be supported. Two, our Wi-Fi connection is really bad and terrible. And mostly artists do not have the resources to be able to engage on such platforms. But I really do applaud Mitambo Festival for taking this initiative and opening up such kinds of discussions and ensuring that theater remains alive. As for us, apart from the work that we've been doing with the schools, where we engage them as a live audience, we have also
sorry to interrupt you. I hope we are now rounding up your presentation.
Yes, it's over.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. We've also tried to ensure that we do other shows can try to build an audience for us online, especially so that we can be able to monetize our project after the pandemic is over. So we are hoping that what has happened so far, the challenges that have been there posed by the pandemic and the advantages that come with the pandemic, we will then be able to also take advantage of it, build on an online audience. And when the time comes, when the situation is good, we then can then also engage the online audience as the live audience. Yeah, for me, that's it. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Jason. You are our last presenter. Please present.
Okay, first of all, I'm a poet. I am from Swiss and Italian origin. My mother language is German, not English, so I'm not a native English speaker. And I give you my personal viewpoint on what on the theater matters. And first of all, I would like to express my appreciation to the organizer for creating the Mitambo International Theater Festival in a virtual version. It's a proof that theater really matters. Pandemic that is affecting the performing arts and audiences all over the world is not just a threat to the health of people, but it's extremely detrimental for culture and the arts, especially the performing arts. It hits the performing arts, the theater professionals, very, very hard. An internal paper of the government of Germany that was leaked out these days shows that the politicians are intending to intensify an atmosphere of fear in society. And people who are aware of the history of wars know that fear and panic make it for a government easier to introduce laws and measures that are limiting the freedom of people and are destroying creativity. For sure, what is going all over the shopping to the global scale. There's nothing wrong with the spread of a virus, nothing wrong with contaminating spaces and objects. These are right approaches to the matter, but telling kind of facts to the people so that they are getting into a history. No. One question I would like to take is culture and the arts, including theater, environment, that is missing or the arts. Sustainable developments are binding. For most of the countries, it means culture has not appropriate importance it should. It means politicians are not thinking of culture and culture makers when they should. It also means that culture works and artists all over the world need to unite, make sure that culture is of highest importance in the country. Times that we go through now, the performing nations are feeling this lack of being in this, not in the lack of being in the sustainable development goals in a very detrimental way. It's the organization I'm the director of. Its members and its centers and projects look, the pandemic was and still is tough, from no performance is possible and no job to very restricted situations. A survey that we from the General Secretariat of ITI did with the center showed that a large majority of the activities such as festival and conference for this year were cancelled, only some were postponed. Many performers of our members lost hope immediately after the lockdown that were in country after country after country. What to do? It was obvious that we need to help our members and the performing arts community. That's why ITI increased the communication with the performing arts community. It increased the number of newsletters that were sent out. ITI started an initiative of encouragement, support, and hope. People were sending in letters, words of encouragement, personal videos, or all kinds of encouraging messages. Both our flagship events of ITI were held online, World Theatre Day and International Dance Day. And for International Dance was Gregory Makoma from South Africa who wrote a brilliant message. Again, Members and friends were sending encouraging and supporting messages for these 2 days. And festivals went online with performances, conferences, and workshops. The Student Festival of the ITI UNESCO Network for Higher Education and Performing Arts that should happen in the theater venues of the Piccolo Teatro di Milano in July was held online. During this festival, the performances were presented online. The conference led by the students was online. It was, in a way, very strange experience because to look at performances on the screen is not the same as when they are live, but it was also very astonishing the creativity, the young people, the emerging artists were transmitted positive energy, and they gave hope to the professionals and the educators, including me. Nevertheless, the essence of theater is to perform in front of an audience live. Presenting a play to the audience on the screen is not the same. All of us who have been in the audience in a venue may have experienced the spiritual fire that is ignited by a performer or performers. All of us who watch performances may have felt how that performer or performers created a magic space that catched our attention and stimulated our life. Moreover, most of us enjoyed to be part of the dialogue that the performer is creating with the audience. And this is the essence of theater. It was, and it is, and will be. In such times dominated by the pandemic, we need to learn. We need to make the best out of it. We need to outcreate the negative aspects that were enforced upon our life. We need to outcreate the fear and the panic. And never, never, we do have to give up hope. Nothing can substitute a live performance or a live panel discussion. Meeting online, discussing online, watching a performance online is okay to do and should be done. But theater is best when it's live with people. I hope, and I hope, and what at the moment, and what should give hope to everybody is that some location of the world, the situations already allows to have performances. For instance, in Lecce, in Italy, where actresses and musicians perform in the circular ruins of ancient times, or in Hamburg, where they start to have performances in the Thalia Theater inside the venue, but with a reduced number of people in the audience. Theater matters. Theater is important for the performance and the audience. Theater is a driving force in a society. Theater inspires. Theater is giving voice to the members of a community and may unite the community. It is one of the duties of the International Theatre Institute, ITI, the world's largest organization for the performing arts, that theatre continues to matter and that culture, theatre, dance, music, and all the arts matters for people and those that are voted into governmental positions. It is for the sake of the individual, for the sake of the artist, for the sake of the society, for the sake of the audience, for the sake of creating a better world in peace. We need to make sure that theater really, really matters.
Okay, great. And I love how I just sent you a reminder that you're left with 5 minutes and then you end here. And thank you so much for that rousing call for us to remember that theatre matters and for us to not give up hope, because in these times that we're living in, and it's very easy for people to lose hope because you have all these negative news that you receive, and you're confined in a space where there's a virus that is coming at you, and you're also losing people around you and not knowing what is going to happen and not having any clear solutions in terms of how we're going to face the future. And just before I open up to the audience, I just want to ask the panelists a couple questions and maybe just have a little bit of a back and forth. Yvette, you were talking about the human cost of the pandemic and how you've, as ASETAGE, have actually started realizing the human cost of the pandemic, especially with the global coffee sessions that you have. And I wanted to find out from you in terms of looking into the future, because they usually say that pandemics, when they start, this is like our first year it might be a 2-year thing before we can actually safely say that we're out of this. What do you think that the human cost is going to be beyond this, and even if we do come out of this space, and what can theatre organizations and theatre artists do to mitigate that?
I think that the cost is going to be high. I think that, we're already seeing that there are many people who are making a choice to leave the profession, or who are not able to, their companies are not surviving, or their theatres are not surviving. I think the space where hope exists is that as artists, we are in tune with our creativity. And we are incredibly resilient already, because it's not as though the arts have ever been an easy space to be working in. And so what I do see is that a lot of people are really thinking out the box. They are working in a very adaptable way. They're building their resilience through community, and I think that that's really important. They're finding unlikely partnerships to work with. They're looking at how theatre can play a role in other spaces. So we've heard a couple of mentions of the fact that for some within our society, theatre is not seen as something that matters. If you go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's considered to be something of privilege as opposed to be something essential. I don't believe that. I believe these things are as urgent as one another. I feel that we have to be feeding our minds and our souls at the same time as we are feeding our bodies. These things have to be integrated. But I think that if artists can work with that idea that there may be other spaces that are not the traditional art spaces in which they can be operating, and there may be collaborators with whom they could be working who could find the value of the arts in this time. So whether that is social development organizations or health organizations or educational spaces, we've been doing a lot of work to say, we have this huge pool of artists. We can see the crisis in the education department and system right now. How can we as artists support you? And so, for example, there have been projects around artists creating interventions which allow for children to regain their sense of well-being, to deal with the stress of trying to fit, in our case in South Africa, trying to finish a school year against all the odds and try and get their school leaving certificates. So, the arts coming in as a space of healing and of support for well-being. So I think that if we are willing to change our ideas about where the arts should happen, how the arts should happen, in what context it should happen, I think that we will find ways to prove our value, and that in so doing we'll also find ways to survive. And we may in fact find we look back at this time as being an incredibly enriching period in which we discovered all sorts of new things about what is possible within theatre and the arts. But I think that if we stick to the tried and formulas that we've been using in the past, and we just try and follow that path, we will probably find it very difficult to survive in the current context.
All right, thank you very much for that. Nicole, I wanted to find out from you in terms of the list of demands that the BPOC, am I pronouncing it correctly, that you have set up in terms of the engagement that you have with Senator Kamala Harris, and whether you see if there's going to be some sort of meaningful impact from that engagement, and what sort of advice you can give to people like us in Zimbabwe. We're also trying to engage politicians at that level in terms of making sure that theatre matters and theatre can be put in a space where it can actually thrive.
It's BIPOC.
Oh, okay.
Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And that's a term that is very thoughtfully constructed because of the attack on Black and Indigenous bodies in our nation. We're not trying to devalue people of color or to box them into one kind of collective whatever, but there's a very pronounced attack against Black and Indigenous bodies in our nation. And our community of people of color are in support of us highlighting and uplifting that fact, because in addressing that fact, we feel like we can assuage a lot of things. So it's BIPOC. And then the politics. Our politicians are for sale, like most politicians. And so they're really interested in maintaining their power in the current structure that we have. And so part of our attempt to engage them is to appeal to their power by showing the constituency that includes people who are artists who are voters, and people who are artists who have voice, who can galvanize and change public opinion and have influence. It's easy to get meetings with these offices when you're able to demonstrate the power of your influence in that way. But at the same time, our industry is looked at as being devalued. There's a man named Ossie Davis, the late great Ossie Davis, who was an artist, an African-American man. And I remember him coming to speak with a group of people at Juilliard, which is an institution of arts learning here in New York. And it was remarkable to me because it was the second time I had heard him speak, but he told the same story. And the story that he told was of the moment that he realized that his industry had been usurped after a period in America known as McCarthyism. It was a time during the Red Scare where people were being called out for being communist, many of whom who are part of the theater industry and the Hollywood industry. And he said at that moment in our nation, the cultural zeitgeist moved from seeing what we did as being a part of public discourse and being a part of a service to being entertainment for entertainment's sake, as opposed to our work being entertaining as a mode of engagement for the work that we're really doing in the areas of spiritual healing, physical healing, mental healing, and the consideration of, and really the practice of life. That's what we do. We provide a space so that you can practice life. I'm encouraged by the breakdown that's happening here, because as Tobias and Yvette and Jason said, the systems of distribution for our services do not function. And in our nation, weren't really functioning for everyone before. So while there has been a mad dash to scramble to plug up the holes in the dam, now everyone's standing with all 10 fingers and all 10 holes trying to hold up the dam that is breaking. So I am encouraged by the idea that we let it fall and find new ways to create systems for the distribution of our services that are more reflect nature and less reflect hierarchy. That's what I'm encouraged for. And that includes a grassroots approach, because as long as we continue to engage the hierarchy for assistance, we'll be within that system. So there are very many people looking for ways to incorporate what we do outside of the paradigms that have been established. And I feel like that's a very experimental thought. Not everyone is down for that thought, but it is one that is gaining some steam, and I'm excited to see what comes of it.
All right, great. Thank you very much for that input, Nicole. Tobias, I wanted to find out from you in terms of Theatre Matters, what is ITI looking at in terms of going beyond where we are now in terms of engagements with audience, in terms of making sure that we can come back to a space where theatre becomes what it is, or what it can actually be for people, for nations?
I think for me, I'm a person who thinks theater is for everybody. And this is my important, I lead this, like theater is for everybody, for the community, for the white collar, for the blue collar, for everybody. And I think for the children, for the disabled, whoever wants to do it. And I think what Nicole said about letting it break down in a way is is that what we do a lot. Now we are publishing a series of books about social theater or community theater, because what I experienced just now during the pandemic, in the student festival, there was one performance where young students were telling us stories dealing with the pandemic. They went into the community on empty rails and into their city, and they were performing there, and with somebody running with a camera after them. And it was so much something which they wanted to say. And if you look at the other productions were not such alive, because this was alive because it was really a communication of what touched them. And I think nothing wrong with Shakespeare and Chekhov and all this elite kind of theater. But I think if we go to the community, to the people, to the children, to those people who live, like we need to go there where is life. And I think that's what also Nico said, like you need to live to be a good actor. And if you're out of the society, what are you going to act? So you need to be in communication. And this is what basically I support in ITI very much. And I'm very, like, as I said, people is for everybody. So if you want to play for 5 people who are very rich, go ahead. But people is for the child who is there. It's for the member of a right-wing party as from a left-wing party. It's for a communist. It's for any nation, any religion. It's there for this. And this, I think, is very important. And if we can learn out of this in this period, that we really should open up, if we really should go into the street and play in the street, etc., and listen what the stories they tell us, then I see a good future. That's what I have to say. Does this answer somehow your questions?
Somehow, yes. No, that's absolutely fine. Jason, I wanted to hear from you. You were talking about the challenges that you've been facing as an organization as a result of this pandemic, and the challenges, I'm sure that some of them are quite peculiar to Zimbabwe, and some of them are not peculiar to Zimbabwe. And I wanted to find out from you in what sort of engagement are you trying to get in terms of key stakeholders who are involved, probably from government level to even service providers, as well as what sort of situation can we create so that even if we're still in this situation with the lockdown, we can still have theatre thriving.
My network is bad, so I was getting different pieces of your question, but I hope I got what you asked. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So for us, I think I've been sitting with a couple of friends, and we've been discussing about this and maybe trying to make a way forward. And I think for us, it's mostly to first engage with the government, because I think as it stands right now, if government is allowing association of at least 50 people to gather, like especially for churches, then I think it's something that they should also try to allow for us as theater practitioners. Some of our theaters are not that big, and especially for the Jason and Pepper Little Theater, it's very small. And I think getting an audience of 30 to 50 or 40 people would be good for us, maybe on a daily basis, and then we can then try to protract in terms of the number of days when we can show our shows. But I think what's important is for us as artists in Zimbabwe to come together in one voice and engage with the government and try and engage them in such a way that they can then allow us to operate and also look at us as essential services, like Nicole mentioned earlier on. We need to be recognized as essential services to share our narrative, to share our stories, because we live art, we speak art, everything we do is art. So for for me, I think that's the first step that we need to take. But I think as a collective, as artists, as an artist body, we need to first meet and engage first of all, and then be able to engage with other stakeholders like the government. But also, I think we also need to make sure that when it comes to having audiences coming into our spaces, we will also be able to sanitize and fumigate the spaces, because I think what's also important is our audience, rather than for us looking at the gated means and saying we need to make money, but also our audience is important in it comes to.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to open up to the audience if you have any questions that you want to ask the panelists. And also I'm going to invite the panelists, if you have any questions that you want to ask each other, feel free to go ahead and do that. This is our time for us to engage, for us to have conversation on these theatre matters.
Can I speak? Hello? Hey.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chiedza has something in the, I think we should answer hers before we do mine. I'll defer. Chiedza.
Oh, okay, all right. Let me see. Chiedza says, very exciting presentations. Thank you, Mitambo Festival, for organizing this. Listening to everyone speak, there's the common theme of the importance of live theater or performance. In this light, I can't help but think that maybe this times award us as artists, performers, and creators the opportunity to audience or watch and appreciate other performances such as architecture, space, and how nature interacts with that space. I'm left to reflect critically on my own audiencing to performances happening around me and how as an artist can cultivate the gift of audiencing of these live performances for others. I think it was more of a comment, or I'm not sure if there's a question there, but it's a very critical comment that speaks to how we are living at the moment.
I'd love to respond to that just by saying that for me, what has been most effective when theatre has gone online is when it's tried to preserve in some way or another some element of that liveness. So, you know, I mentioned very briefly earlier that there's been a lot of streaming of performances. And mostly for me, these are quite unsatisfying somehow, because there's no difference between the streaming of the performance, generally speaking, and watching a film. And watching a film, it was always intended to be a film, it's been constructed as a film, it's beautifully done. And watching the piece of theatre, it's not necessarily, you know, it hasn't been constructed in that way, it wasn't intended to be shared in that way. So it can feel very unsatisfying in a sense. But when there's something which is added to that experience, which is about liveness, somehow it jolts us, it gives us maybe not the same experience as you would have had in a live theatre, but at least something of that sense of connection. So, and I think it moves us in interesting ways. So whether it's been, for example, we've been doing a storytelling project which has gone live on Facebook, where there is the opportunity to both interact with the audience, get their feedback, talk back to them. There's also children within a kind of a Zoom room environment where you can see them, you can see their faces, you are speaking directly to them. The piece of WhatsApp theatre that I mentioned, which is happening on your phone, so it's a very intimate thing because it's literally coming into your phone, and you have to engage with it physically by pressing the buttons to move on to the next piece of conversation or whatever. You know, all of these elements that give us the sense of it happening in the now, I think somehow have a more powerful impact on the audience than pieces that in some way replicate something which is pre-recorded or you know, and that would happen the same regardless of who was there. So for me, that's been a very interesting observation, is just seeing what techniques people are using in order to try and capture just a little taste of what theatre is in online spaces.
All right, thank you very much, Yvette, for that. Nicole, would you like to?
I just saw Tobias raise his hand. Tobias?
sorry. I just gave an answer to Yvette Short. I think in 2006, Ariane Mushin wrote the message, what's here the message, and the next day some people were invited to her Théâtre du Soleil, and she was not around, so we were looking for her. And then she was running around with a camera. And then she said, we are now, I think it was the drummers of the Damned, which she now made a film out of, which you can download online and you can buy in Amazon or wherever. And she said, a film, when I do the films, I'm not using theater techniques to make the film. I have to think how a film is done. And if you ever can look one of these plays she put on film, it's amazing. But it's not what you see on the stage from her. And I think this is the theater makers need to learn to adapt to another medium. And it's not just the camera and then you see the people on stage. I think this is the only thing I wanted to mention.
Okay, all right.
All of that. I also think that what Yvette said struck me as well about the liveness of theater. And I think that's because theater's roots are ritual. So it doesn't feel the same because when you're engaged in a ritual, you're engaged in the witnessing of transformation before your eyes. That's what makes it feel magical. And not only are you witnessing, you are partaking in the transformative rite. And so I feel like it's not that film and television or things that are streamed or pre-recorded are not impactful, but just like witnessing a baby born is not the same when you're not there. Like when you're there, it's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like literally, oh my God. Even if you're an atheist, oh my God. Like you're just like, oh my God. This transformation is astounding in front of my eyes. When you see that same birth videotaped, you go, oh my God. Yeah, oh Lord. But it's not as transformative as when you were there. I don't know how we can make up for that energy exchange that happens when you're in the presence of someone. But I do think there is something about the effectiveness of live presentations, even through the technology. But what I agree also with Tobias or everyone, Jason said it too, like we can't be rendered immobile. What we offer is a service that is essential. If we don't provide sacred secular spaces for people to be able to consider who they are to themselves, to each other, to the world, and what life means, we are doing ourselves a collective disservice. There's a reason why we want to make that a part of a collective investigation, not an individual investigation, because we're better together. We can do it faster together. We can evolve with greater intention when we all apply our focus and energy together. It's really very spiritual. So yes, you can do it alone, but you'll be doing it for eons. If we do it together, we can come up with some solutions and really bring consciousness to the ways in which we want to evolve, because that's what we're doing. We're saying, hey, let's practice life. Let's take a look. Is this how we want to be? Is this how we want to be? Is this how you want to be when you're in this situation? And then we're able to apply that with greater intention. So if we remember what our purpose is, I think we've forgotten as well. Whether we're a part of institutions that are just that lose their sense of mission because the institution becomes this thing that has to survive as opposed to this thing that has to serve, or whether you're an individual who has lost sense of your own power, or you've lost sense of what it means to, or the full responsibility of being an artist, and you're just trying to be famous and get paid. I think the paradigm of thought has to shift about what it is we do. There's a reason why artists are persecuted and must leave their countries. There's a reason why people are, because it's powerful. What we do is powerful. There's a reason why Hollywood is starting up immediately. It's our main export, our worldview. So if we don't remember our own power and take it on a local, regional, national, international level, then of course we're going to be subject to whatever these government structures and hierarchical structures say that we should do.
Yeah, definitely. That was very well put, Nicole. Melody Zambuko says, very good simile of childbirth there, Nicole, I get you. And I think and it really just what you speak about in terms of connection and figuring out who we are collectively, I think that's really important. And I think this could have been the time for us to do that, because with this pandemic, we lost sight of who we are. We lost sight of why we do things. We lost sight of why we are here and how, and we couldn't, for a minute, we couldn't figure out how to do that. And I think it's important for us to see how we can actually get back to a space where we can actually still create those connections as collectives, not as individuals. There was a hand up. Trevor, are you still here with us? Do you still want to ask your question? Trevor Makonyonga? Okay, we at the moment we can't hear you. Maybe try to figure out what's going on there.
Yes,
would you like to type your question, because we can't hear you? We're just getting some sort of static from your end.
I'm still here. Let me hear me.
Okay, now we can hear you. Okay. All right. Whilst you are figuring out your connection, Trevor, is there anyone else who wants to ask a question, or has a comment or a contribution to what is being said?
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Hilary, and I'm in Rustenburg, South Africa. I just want to say thank you to Mitambo for this wonderful festival, and thank you to Tobias, Patsime, Nicole and Yvette for the enlightening contributions that you've given unto us. I agree with Nicole when she said live presentations are great. The energy they transfer is phenomenal. I've witnessed it as teacher and the principal of Oasis Learners Academy, where our children are also very much doing theater production. And now that during this COVID-19, we've been working with educators from an organization called Mavana, and they're now closed. And the children are actually on my neck right now asking me, when are they coming back? They are so much looking forward to it, because that's the only time they can be able to express themselves and have the joy. And now they are not there. It's really disturbing them. So I'm in actually agreement with Nicole. But now I've got a question for you, Yvette. There's a document that she presented when she was doing a presentation. Is it possible that I can access it? And if it is possible, how do I?
Yes, thanks, Hilary. You will very shortly be able to access it on our Assetege International website. It's about to go live. But also, just to let you know that within South Africa, Assetege South Africa is going to be driving a campaign for arts education and for the rights of every child to engage with the arts during this time. And the manifesto is going to be one of our main tools. So we will be using it a lot in South Africa for that purpose. And you'll definitely be able to access it. If you'd like to just give me a little message in the chat with your email, I can also send it to you directly. But it should very shortly be available to everybody on our website, our Assetege International website.
Okay, great. David Bumbe, you have a question that you wanted to ask. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is David. I am here in Zimbabwe, and it is incredible to be able to connect in this way. I was struck with this idea of revolution as I've been listening to everyone, just this sense that for us to go on and continue, revolution is important. We need to have our own personal revolutions to get rid of whatever barriers we may have had that was stopping us from creating, or within our institutions, re-examine where our institutions are, re-examine globally and nationally what art means to us, and get us to that space of essential workers. And I'm just, yeah, I'm like struck by that. And like for me coming out of this, that's going to be my carrion call, my driving force, like that revolution. So thank you for just bringing that up into my head. That's what I want to say.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. We have Ernest Ngoma. You have a question that you wanted to ask. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know whether everybody's hearing me. Thank you, Amasi, for this time, and also for Mitambo Festival. I'm Ernest Nyatanga from Waterfalls Harare. I heard Justin Mpepo talking about the challenges they are facing, like they can't have the live audiences, and also it has affected maybe their viability. So, and of course, you said now it's not a direct substitute to say you have a theater being shown virtually. It's not the same as the live. So my question now is, how can they monetize the virtual presentation, because they need to also to make money from gate taking. So in the absence of gate takings, they do it virtually. So how do they monetize those productions? That's my question.
Okay, I think that's a question for everybody. Maybe whoever wants to start may respond.
Monetizing, man. David, if we knew how to monetize that, we wouldn't be here. No, but all jokes aside, people do have to live and eat. A lot of individual artists, I'll speak about them in our nation, have done a lot to secure their financial situations on YouTube, which operates like television on the basis of the distribution of advertisements. So once you have gotten your viewership to a certain amount, that becomes a revenue stream for you. A lot of people are surprised by how much money they have made in juxtaposition with their live performances by charging less but having more people, because the platform allows you to access more people. So I have a few friends, mostly in music, but one or two in the theater arts, who have presented their work in some kind of live stream or something like that and charged instead of, the average off-Broadway performance or regional performance, I would say is, $40 to $70 in the States to get a ticket to get into the theater. It's a lot of money. But on YouTube or on a platform, Patreon is another one people have been using. They charge like $1, but they're getting like thousands of people. So it sort of balances out. But I don't think that there's a yellow brick road to that. I think, David, you and the rest of the globe are working on what that looks like. And I hope that you innovate something that we all can use. Thank you, David.
All right, anyone wants to answer the question again?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. I mean, I agree with what Nicole said. It's a really difficult space at the moment. There are no easy answers around monetizing. In South Africa, there've been a couple of new initiatives. For example, South African Theatre on Demand, which is basically a platform to allow theatre to be streamed, and which you can get payment directly for your performances through. But I think that what we're seeing is that the models don't yet work. They don't yet make complete financial sense for anybody. So there's a lot of experimentation with models. We've also had a lot of requests for virtual performances for all sorts of things, book fairs, festivals, everything which is going online, and trying to work out what exactly the prices should be. I mean, it is just so different. You know, obviously I'm aware of what's happening across Europe and what's happening in different parts of the world, and people are using such a range of models where, you know, it's everything from charging very little to a lot of people to actually charging a great deal for what is essentially often a once-off streaming of something, or a one-day streaming of something, you know, having access to it for a limited amount of time. But I don't know whether there are any definitive answers yet. I think that what we need to do as an arts community is share what is out there, share both the good, the bad, and the ugly, in a sense, so that people have more idea of what is possible, what has been tried, what's available, what's working and why it's working, and what's not and why it's not. And we'll need to keep refining those models as we go. I don't think there's an answer as yet.
Okay, great. Thank you for those contributions, Nicole and Yvette. Are there any other burning questions before I ask the panelists to say their last remarks? Any other burning questions? Okay. All right. So now I'll give okay, I think there's a question from Kwame, or is it a comment? Kwame says, I think the digital space comes with a lot of affordances to rethink liveness. If we're thinking about liveness as the collective energy that bodily core present in theater, the onus lies on us how to rethink, re-envision the digital essence of liveness. Maybe the new liveness is transformed into new modalities, say gesture, digital breath, or immersive videography, like Tobias mentioned. So yes, the live energy is phenomenal, but we need not to discount that new liveness that the digital space creates. The question now is, how can we make that new liveness more profound as theater makers? All right, thank you for that contribution, Kwame. I guess if there are no more comments or questions from the audience, I'm going to ask the panelists to say, to round off, to say any last parting words before we close the meeting. I'll start with Yvette, because she's the one who started off with the presentations.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I mean, I think for me that, you know, one of the things that is so important about the arts is that without the arts, we have no hope. There was a study that was done in New York recently, which demonstrated this very, very specifically. And it tracked children who were seeing live theatre against a group of children who weren't seeing live theatre over a period of 5 years. And it was looking at other kinds of measurables. It was looking at, you know, how are they doing academically, and how are their social skills, you know, all sorts of things. And mostly had very favorable results. But the surprising thing that they found in this particular study was that the children who had access to live theatre over that period, at the end of that period, had more hope for the future. They could envisage a future. They could see themselves walking into that future. Whereas for those kids who hadn't been engaged with the arts to the same extent, they didn't have that same experience. They had less sense of possibility for themselves. And so I guess what I want to close with is that we need the arts. We all need it, because it is what gives us hope. It is what speaks to that humanity in us, and it is what allows us to see that there is something more possible for ourselves, for our communities, and for our world. And so whatever challenges we may be facing right now, I think we need to come together around that hope and work on embedding it as much as we can in our practice at this moment. So yes, thank you for this opportunity to share with all of you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Yvette. Nicole?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Yvette. And I think that we have an opportunity now. I think it's really easy to look at what's going on and say, oh my God, the world is caving in upon me. But we can also think about 2020 as being like for 2020 vision, that now we have some clarity about the ways in which our previous systems were not serving our needs and not embodying the truth. and we can create new ones. We made those up, make up some more, and figure out how to make all art seen as essential. I think that there is, I don't think it's just in my country. I think there's a universal devaluing of the arts or lack of understanding of where they came from and the technology that they are. We're spending a lot of time talking about the technology that is now available to us through Zoom and the internet and all of that. But the original technology is the narrative and how to shape it and mold it. And that has served us well. It's gotten us this far. But now we need a new narrative. We need a new paradigm. And that's what we're looking to shape as well. So I'm excited because I feel like at this particular moment, the world, the galaxy maybe even, is giving birth to something new. Only some of us don't know that we're pregnant. So we're just wigging out because we're feeling pain. But if you know that you're pregnant and that this is a moment of birth, you will approach the process differently. You will breathe. You will prepare so that when we have the new thing, you can now nurture it to become the new thing. So I really feel like this is an opportunity, not in an opportunistic way, not in a like, let's all go buy up all the property because it's cheap way, but in the sense that we have an opportunity to actually make it the way we want to make it. We were all so busy before just trying to hold on to what we got. That's gone. It's gone. Let it go. Now, what do you want it to be? And this is our opportunity. And I agree wholeheartedly also with Kwame in the chat. And I also think that the onus is on us. So if we don't do it, we have no one to look to but ourselves, because now is the time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nicole. Jason, are you still with us? Would you like to give us your parting words? It's okay. Whilst we're trying to figure out if Jason is still with us, Tobias, maybe you may go ahead and share your last words.
I put on the microphone. I think this is a chance and opportunity, like Nicole says, and also Yvette mentions. I think you have to use this time. We have to communicate more, listen more, go out to the people, listen to the people, speak with people we never have spoken, and increase our communication. I think this is a daily means, and not feeling and listening. Listening is part of communication, and listen to what the sorrows of the people have. And I think if you can cheer up your colleagues and let them look at some challenges they can manage as a step. And I think this is extremely important, and get rid of all this strange news, etc., because I think you should be safe, you should be in good health. This is what I wish for everybody. But it's you who decide what you do, and it's you who are taking distance when you feel unsure, you take the mask when you need, etc. And it's not neither the doctors nor the politicians are gods. Like they know as much as they know, and we have to live our own life, and we have to take this chance. I know from history sometimes when there were crises like this, even financial crisis, it's just how to say, the prelude for a better time. And I'm totally sure that this will be a prelude of better times. And how it is, this is all of us who are creating it. It's not some government person who says, no, you have to do this. No, not at all. It's you, we, the artists, who listen maybe a little bit more than others, who are creative, who can put something into existence that other people like. So this is the chance, and we should take it. That's my last word here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tobias. Jason, please share your last thoughts. Jason is experiencing a bit of some technical difficulties with his internet service. We're hoping you'll be able to share his last thoughts in a minute.
And thank you very much for inviting us to speak here and to share the thoughts. This is so, it's so good and it's so energetic and it's very like all of you and all like the whole atmosphere. Very well done, I think, for it. I appreciate very much.
Oh, and thank you for being part of this. It has been quite special.
I appreciate so much. It's not often that I get to engage people all over the world. And if there is a benefit to this technology, I mean, being on a panel with Tobias and Yvette and Jason while sitting in my room is something that couldn't happen. So there are advantages. And I thank you for curating it that way so we get a broader perspective on what's happening kind of like continentally, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really incredible to hear perspective from different parts of the world and hear the incredible work that everyone is doing in these difficult times. I'm inspired. I think Jason might not be able to share his last words. So I'll just say thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tobias, for the very powerful and insightful presentations and discussion that we had with our audience. And thank you, Mitambo, for allowing me to be kind of the boss of all these wonderful and powerful people for a few minutes.
Sasa, thank you for the moderation.
Yes, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. Thank you. So we're going to have a discussion tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'm just going to share the link on the group chat so that if you are able to join, you may join the meeting. It's going to be an equally powerful discussion, and the topic is performing the nation, interrogating the role of the government, industry, and academia in the theater. And it's at 1 p.m. Harare Pretoria time, and the Zoom link is there in the chat. Please take a minute to copy it, and so that you can join tomorrow. Once again, thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us, or morning or evening. I don't know where you are or what time it is. And I've been replenished. I've been energized by all these wonderful thoughts and comments and ideas, and I have hope. I have hope that we're going to come out of this stronger. Yeah. All right.
Blessings
Bye.
to you so much.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.